There is only one perfect solution, but there are clues that will try to trick our team.
Hello there everyone, my name is Crazy Caleb and welcome to our big 500th tutorial, and today we're going to be taking a look at 3 cryptic steps. So this is the way the module looks. What we have here is we have a dark blue background, and to start us off with, we're going to be on step 1 of one of the 3 cryptic steps. And this is going to present us with a red button on the left and a green button on the right. And what we have to do is we have to press one of these at a correct time, which is going to be dealt with using the visit the bomb timer. So, let's get right into this. So with this module, we have 3 cryptic steps we have to go through. Step 1 is quite simple. Step 3 is also very simple to do. But step 2 is what makes this module so notorious. And it's actually not too bad once you understand how it works, but let's get right into this first step, though. We'll come back to that later. It's what makes this module the way that it is, and it's kind of why it's a little bit feared, to be honest. But trust me, once we get through this tutorial, you should be able to do this just fine. So, the module has 2 colored buttons, a left button and a right button. Press the correct colored button at the correct time to complete the step. Each colored button is only valid on a specific time. Now, the way that it considers all of these times here is it takes the total seconds remaining, but it does it in a way that the bomb's timer has to be modulo 10 minutes. So in this case, we currently have 58 minutes currently on our clock. Right now, what it would be considering is it would only be considering 8:38, for example. It only considers the 3 least significant digits of the actual timer. So in this case, the 8 being the most, the 2 being the second, and the 7 being the least. So that is the way how the seconds work. Now that you understand how those work, let's get right into this. All times on even seconds are invalid. This cannot be on any sort of last digit being even. We have to make sure that that's important and we note that down. Now, the way that this works is we need to figure out the valid times for left and right. And the valid times for left and right are like this. All valid times for the right button are prime, and all valid for the left are composite. Prime is simply it's only available to be multiplied by 1 in itself, and composite is everything else that has at least more than one factor. For example, 2, 3, 5, etc., etc. Now, I have prime checker with me because this is going to help me determine what some of the prime numbers that we're looking at here. So that's why I have this today. But there's also one more rule that we need to go over because it's not simply just pressing it when it's a prime second or a prime second or composite second. All valid times must share the same prime composite status as the same time 4 seconds lower. So if we were to do, for example, 595 minus this by 1, minus this by 4, what we would have to do is we would have to check the status of 591 as well. These both 595 and 591 need to be the exact same status, whether they be both prime or composite. In this example, if we were to look at prime checker, we would take a look here. 595 is not listed as prime. 591 is also not listed as prime. These are both composite numbers. These would both therefore work. And there's also a little bit of a unicorn case, whereas all valid times are irrelevant when the bomb's minute display is 32 minutes. Just press the right button anytime. That's the way that this works. So let's get right into this, and let's start actually calculating. I generally tend to calculate for the left because there's a lot more options compared to calculating for the right button. It just is easier that way. But just remember that even seconds are going to be invalid here. So let's take a look and let's see what we can calculate here with this number. So we're currently at 56 minutes. I'm going to calculate for 55. So so in this case, what we're going to do is we're going to do 5 times 60, not 55 times 60. We're going to get a total of 300 from this. Okay. So let's see what we can do here, and let's see if we can perhaps add any sort of value. Maybe let's do like a 21. 321, is that a prime? 321 is not, but if we were to subtract 4 seconds from 321, that would give us 317. That's a prime. However, what we can do is we can do 319. If we were to do 319, what this would give us here is this would give us 319, plus the 19 in this case, minus this by 4. 315 does not appear at all on the prime part. So this is actually going to be working. So what we would do here is on 5519, we are going to be pressing the left button because these are both going to be composite numbers. And the composite status is the exact same 4 seconds later. So let's do this right now. And let's see if that is correct. Now we've entered into stage 2. So this is step 2, and this is the part that is probably the most notorious for this module here. And it is notorious for a wide variety of reasons. So The module will now display a 5x5 grid of colored buttons. Pressing these buttons will change the colors of other buttons, and they're going to be changed in this wide variety of different ways. You can obviously learn how to do this kind of in your head. I'm not going to necessarily focus on reading this part of the manual when we get to that, but and the colors of the buttons always cycle in this order: red, yellow, green, cyan, blue, magenta, and red. And if there happens to be changing at all, it's never going to change like a massive jump, like 2, for example, like from red to green. It will always change exactly once, so you will be clicking a lot of times. And the way that these work is red changes all buttons orthogonally adjacent to the button. So in this case, it doesn't change itself. It changes everything around it. As you can see, we're changing the up, left, right, and down from this position. So that's going to be how this works. Yellow is a bit interesting. Yellow changes all buttons diagonally adjacent to the button. So let's say if we had a yellow right here, what we would have here is we would have these diagonals, in this case the top left, the top right, the bottom right, and the bottom left, and all of these would be essentially diagonal from this yellow button. Now, one thing to keep in mind is that it doesn't count, it doesn't loop around at all, so we would only have the bottom left and bottom right for this example. Green changes all adjacent buttons above and below. Now, it's not just simply up and down, but rather it's simply up left, up and up right, and bottom left, bottom middle, and bottom right that are changing, as you can see here. The same thing with cyan, except it's going to be instead left and right of the button, as you can see here. So, lots of different colors that are going to be changing here. And then next up, blue changes all adjacent buttons to the button. So in this case, it's just simply this little 3x3 grid that's around it. It changes every single one of those. And then magenta is the real one that you're not going to use that often, but it is possible to use. It changes the buttons of the 4 corners in the grid. And it only is ever going to change those 4 corners. And that's going to be the way that this works. So now, let's get into the solving process of this actual module here. Use buttons to form shapes of numbers. So what we're going to do here is we have down here the configuration of all 10-digit patterns. So in this case, what we're going to try and do is with one specific color each time, we are going to be forming a different pattern with each of these colors. So, a number is registered when all squares that make up the number's pattern are the same color. The color used to form the number is stored for that number. Do not store the same color for different numbers. Make sure that you use different numbers, different colors for different numbers. So, one thing that's very important to note is that if you happen to have, for example, we created a 1, for example, you have to have exactly this many colors of that one specific color. You can't have another red like over here in the top left, for example. That would not work. You have to clear that up. So that's going to be what's going to happen here with these numbers. And that's kind of what makes this module a little bit tricky to do. And what we're going to have to do here is we're going to have to separate this up into 2 different groups. The 10 numbers that can be formed are separated into 2 groups, as I just mentioned. Easy numbers and hard numbers. And the easy numbers are 0, 1, 4, 7, and the hard numbers are 2, 3, 5, 6, 8, 9. And as you can see, the difference between 0, 1, 4, 7 and 2, 3, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 6, 8, 9 is the limited amount of space that is present in all of the hard numbers is very telling. For example, there's only these 4 spots right here for 3. For 9, there's only these up here and then right down there. 6, 5, etc. Whereas, for example, 0 has a 3x3 grid inside of it. 1 only takes up 1 column. 7 only takes up 1 row and 1 column. And 4 is 1 column, 1 row, and a little bit extra. Again, it's fairly simple. There's a lot more space involved in it. And what we have to do is, in order to complete the step, we need to form all valid easy numbers or form a valid hard number. 1 valid hard number. Now, we actually don't have to form all 4 of these, as cool as that would be, but what we have to do here is we have to determine which one of the numbers is invalid or which ones are valid in this case. Now, for this tutorial, I'm only going to be teaching the easy numbers. It's just easier that way to do 3 instead of 1. But essentially, a hard number is valid if it is present in the serial number. So in this case, if it happens to be present, for example, we can do a 3 and a 9 for these guys. Those are the 2 numbers that count as valid. You would be forced to do 3 and 9 if you're one of the hard number people. So, however, with the easy numbers, we're going to take the sum of the serial number digits modulo 4, then add 1. Out of the digits 0, 1, 4, 7 in order, the nth number that was just calculated is the only invalid easy number. So let's add this up. So we've got 3 plus 9 is going to be a 12. We're going to modulo this by 4, and we're going to add 1 to this. And what this does is this represents the position in that sequence that we're going to mark as invalid. So in this case, it's going to be the first position, and we're going to be marking 0 as invalid. So in this case, we're not going to be making 0 at all. We're going to simply make 1, 4, 7. Now, I will be re-rolling for the second example to get a 0 because the 0 is very important for me to cover. So if you want to take a look at the 0, just go past the second example if you want to look at that, or simply stick around for how this solid process works. Just keep that in mind. I will be covering that in the next tutorial. So let's in the next example rather. So what we have to do here is we have to now form 1, 4, and 7 with colors. And the way that I like to do this is I like to start off with 1. 1 is a fairly simple one to do. And I like to do this with red. There's really no particular color that you need to do it with, but there is one color that has to go as a priority for one specific number. Yellow has to go with 0, and I will explain that in the tutorial. So let's just start forming things. Now, generally what I like to do is I like to use red as much as possible because red is orthogonally adjacent, and that's going to be quite nice for simply just inputting a specific color into a specific position without having any sort of diagonal trouble here. However, what I can do also here is I can do the left and right buttons with cyan, in this case over here, and I can simply make these two red. That's going to be quite nice for me. Now what I can do is I can make this one, I can change this red over here and make this guy red, and then I can simply just input that red right there. Like that. Bam. Now let's get rid of any reds that we had beforehand because we want to make sure that we clear up any reds that we have that's going to be essentially in our way. Let's do this. Okay. Now we need to get these last two down here, while also making sure that we cover our tracks and get rid of this guy. So let's form a red over here. And let's get a red placed right in here, okay? Now with cyan, what we can do here is we can make a red right over here. Remember, it's doing the left and right of the buttons. So now what we can do now is we can get a red in here. Let's now change these two reds. Now, unfortunately, these are both magentas because they're only going to change the colors of the corners, which actually we can use, I think. Yes, what we can do here is we can do a green, or rather a cyan, and then what we can do here is we can change both of these guys because it's going to be focusing on the left and right of the button, just like that. Now with cyan, what we need to do is we need to get rid of this red here so that we can be storing a 1 here. So let's maybe get a blue. Let's change this blue over to a green because it's going to be green is going to be focusing on the above and below buttons. Now we also need to cover this guy. Let's think here. Maybe let's do the cyan. We need to change this to magenta. And we can do blue. Perfect. There we go. So now, what we've got here is we have a 1 that is just perfectly red. There are no other reds on the board right now. And this means that we have successfully formed a 1. You will hear that little ding sound, and you will see this color. You will see the number in the top light up by that specific color that you made. So we've already done 1, so now what we're going to do is we're going to clear the board, and now we don't really need to do it in numerical order. We can do it in whichever order we please, and I like to do 7 next as well. 7 is a nice and easy one to do as well. It's just simply the topmost row and the rightmost column, and I like to do this one in blue. So let's get this thing going. Let's get this top left one going first. Okay, blue. Let's use the diagonals here from yellow. And like I said, I'm not really paying attention to what the colors do. I know how these colors work. But essentially, you're just going to be able to play around, and you will learn how these things work, kind of second nature. And of course, the only way that you can strike is if you form an invalid number. So just keep that in mind. There's no real way that you can strike on this. So let's get back into this blue. So let's maybe change this blue over here. Maybe let's make you red. Let's make you blue. Let's make you red, so that we can just essentially insert the blue up in here, like that. Let's do. That's gonna be interesting. Let's do red. Okay. Now we need to get these two positions while getting rid of this one. Let's think about this. Let's see. So magenta changes all the corners. If we can perhaps get something to tamper with, and I'm fine with tampering these with these 3 blues, what we need to focus on is getting this corner actually taken care of. Corners are such an important thing to deal with. So perhaps let's use cyan. Let's get the left and right taken care of. Because what we need is we need a blue up in that corner. We can simply just get a red in here whenever we need to put this blue back in. That's all we simply need to do. So actually, I like the idea of getting a red over here. Let's put you into that blue. I'll put this blue back in paste. And let's put the red in here. Okay. Now we're gonna mess around with this. So now we need to get this guy up in here. This is a bit tricky. And perhaps what we can do is we can use a yellow here. Yellow to get this blue up in the top left corner. Now all we simply need to do is we need to get a red right here. And then we should be able to solve this module. So I solve this stage. So let's get a blue up there, excuse me, let's get a red up here. Let's get a blue up here. Brilliant, okay. And now what we simply need to do is we simply need to get rid of these blues here. So we can just do this, and just like that, a 7 has been made with the blue. So now all we simply need to do is we need to form a 4. And I generally like to do this one with cyan. I have really no issues with this one. And the way that we want to do this first is we want to focus on these 3 over here and this column over on the right side. Because these guys are going to be simply easy to input. If we happen to get, for example, reds down in these positions, we can simply just set them to whatever color we need to later on. Keep in mind that this one especially will mess up this rightmost one, so just bear that in mind. So let's get right into this. So let's make this into a cyan. Okay. Let's start with perhaps the magentas. The magentas are both going to be the exact same for the corners. Let's make those 2 corners cyan. Let's make you a cyan. Let's get a cyan right here. Let's change this red. Let's change it to a red. Now we can get a cyan right here. Let's change that. Let's change that to a red. Yep. Okay. Let's get rid of all of the cyans over here. Perfect. Okay. This will definitely be interesting. Let's get the cyan right here. Now we're obviously going to be able to we're obviously probably going to have to lose this cyan over here, which means that we can just use a red over down in this bottom right position. So that should work. We want to focus on getting these 2 done. Now, one of the things that I'm immediately realizing is that both of these are the exact same color. That means we're probably gonna have to mix something up. Let's see what we can do here. One of these colors is probably gonna have to be messed up. I'm gonna be honest with you. So green changes above and below. Here, let's change this red. Let's make it a cyan right there. Now what we simply need to do is we need to get these guys in here. There we go. And now, with this in mind, all we simply need to do is we need to simply use these diagonals with the yellow, and we can simply make this into a cyan. Once all 3 digits have been formed, all we simply need to do is we need to simply head over to step 3. This step 3 is going to be a bit easy to do. So step 2, as I said, is easily the hardest of them all, but it is, but in my opinion, it's probably the most fun to do. Step 1 is a fairly simple one. It has to do with time. This one is going to have to do with some letters that we have to input here. And this cipher is actually not too bad to do, so don't worry. So the module now displays a keypad of 23 letters. Note that we're missing some. We're missing a Juliet, a X-ray, and a Zulu, as well as a delete button, in this case a minus, down in the bottom left corner, and a submit button representing by the asterisk. To complete this step, and solve the module, enter in the correct password. So we're now in the final stage of this mod. We're going to take the name of the solved module on the bomb that comes last in alphabetical order. And if there are no solved modules, use undefined. This is exactly why it does not include 3 cryptic steps, because it needs to be solved. Unless there happens to be another 3 cryptic steps on the bomb that you happen to solve, there is of course that case. So we're going to be using undefined in this case because I do not have any other modules currently present on the bomb here. So we've got undefined. So we're going to remove all spaces and all characters that are not in Latin letters from the name. So that's if you happen to have like some sort of weird spelling or whatever, like percentage gray or something like that, you're simply going to get rid of the percentage sign. If the name now has more than 10 letters, use only the first 10 letters. In this case, undefined actually only has 9, so we're good to go with that. And now what we're going to do is we're going to take each letter's alphabetical position and multiply it by the sum of the digits in the bomb's serial number, then modulo 23. Now, one thing that's very important to keep in mind is that when your first alphabetical position, it's just normal. It's just a normal alphabetical position. You're not using this table until you get past this modulo 23 step, which will then be changing each number back into the letter using the table on the next page. Bear in mind, alphabetical position first alphabetical position, because of the fact that you can have Zulus present on different module names, for example. So, let's take a look and let's see what we can do here. So first off, our total of the sum of the serial number was a 12. So we're going to be multiplying every single value that we have in this name by 12, and then modulo 23. So uniform is a 21 times it by 12, modulo is by 23. We can do 23 here. Is 22. That's a Yankee. With November, we have 14 times this by 12. Oh, that's not it. 14 times it by 12. Modulo this by 23 is a 7. Now let's move you up a little bit. This is going to represent hotel down here. 4 times 12, modulo this by 23 is going to be a 2. That's a Charlie. Echo is going to be 5 times this by 12. Modulo this by 23 is going to be a 14. That is a Papa. 6 times this by a 12. Modulo this by 23 is going to be a 3, which is a Delta. 9 times this by 12, modulo this by 23, is going to be a 16. 16 is going to be Romeo. And now, we can actually use applied knowledge here. November, we've already determined from beforehand that represented a hotel. That's going to be the exact same thing. Echo was a Papa, and Delta was a Charlie. We had these ones beforehand. We don't need to do calculations here. We can simply just use our applied theory, applied knowledge, and we can simply make our lives a lot easier. Now, we're going to reverse this string of letters and enter it into the module. Or simply what you can do here is read this from right to left. We've got Charlie, Papa, Hotel, Romeo, Delta, Papa, Charlie, Hotel, and Yankee. We're going to hit the asterisk as a submit button.
Is an acceptable answer. That's absolutely brilliant.
And just like that is a solved module. So, let's go into one more example. I want to cover the 0 because the 0 is such an important step of this module to understand, especially if you get it because it is very common to get. So let's go right into this because I want to make sure that I cover the 0. I will reset the actual bomb if I happen to get another one. And I actually will include a tool mods on here because that's going to be important for me to have some sort of a different mod present on the actual bomb here. In order for me to demonstrate how the solve module on the bomb that comes last alphabetically comes into play here. So, or we can simply just include a Hitman because I like less characters. Hitman. Keep in mind that this is referring to solved modules. And if there are no solved modules, use undefined instead. So that's the way that this works. If you happen to solve this one first, you would use undefined by default. So let's take a look first off at the serial number. Oh, hello, Agent Swan. Alright, so the serial number gives me a 115. That's good. That's already good. I can already tell. Because if we do 1 plus 1 plus 5, 1 plus 1 plus 5, moduloing this by 4, and then adding 1, we're going to be skipping the one that is in the 4th position. In this case, that is going to be the 7. So we're going to do 0, 1, 4 for this. Perfect. We're going to be able to demonstrate that. So let's solve this one. This is Agent Swan. Okay. And now let's get back to the first step of this thing. So currently we're at 59 minutes. Let's do 58, for example. Let's do 50. Excuse me. This will be 8 times 60 because remember we're using the modulo 10 minutes. It's very important that you do that. Which is going to give us a total of 480. So now if we were to do perhaps, let's see if we can do plus 21. Let's see if that gives us anything because that's an odd number. 501 would be a good answer. Now let's see. Is 501 prime or not prime? Let's determine. 501. It is not prime, and if we were to subtract 4 seconds from this, minus 4, would be 497. That is also not prime. 501 works, so we can do this. In this case, a 5821. it fits the expectations. It's an odd number. It's not even, and it is composite. And the number that is 4 seconds afterwards is the exact same. It is composite as well. So let's press the left when it is a 21. That's good to go. Perfect. Now let's get into this step. So what we have here is we have now the time to make a 0. And the way that you want to do this is actually very interesting. The reason why it's important to do it with yellow is because of these specific spots right here. So let's mark these in yellow. You, 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 and you, and you. And the reason why is because these spots would normally be very hard to get, for example, with red. But what you can essentially do in this case is what you can do is you can use the yellows in order to get each other to match. That's the way that this works. So for example, with this yellow, you can essentially line up this yellow perfectly without any problems. This is just an example. I'm not even going to really bother doing with it right now. But this is what it does, and this is why it is such an important thing to do, because this makes your life so much easier to do with these corner bits. Because what you want to do is you want to set up the corners first. Then ideally what you want to do is you want to set up these positions. And then what you're going to be going for is you're going to be trying to go for those spots. If you get one in each corner, you can get the other in the other corner. That's just the way that this works. It's so easy to do that. There is one other thing that you need to make sure that you avoid. When you're working with these 4 spots over here, these 4 that are up, left, right, and down immediately from the center, there's the case, and it's very often that this actually happens. You need to make sure that you avoid the center being a yellow. You need to make sure it's the exact opposite of what you want. That's exactly what you don't want, because if it gets in the center, you're going to have a bad day. And you're going to see probably why if I happen to get it. Which hopefully, I'm hoping that I won't get it. But let's get right into this. So the first things first, let's develop our corners. Let's get this stuff set up. Let's get these all to the same color. We already have 2 that are set to magenta, so that's going to be good for us. Let's just set this one to magenta over here. Let's set you to magenta, and just like that, we will be good to go. We need to press one of the magentas. And just like that, we have our corners developed here. Perfect. Okay. Now what we want to do is we want to develop these 4 positions here. We already have 1 developed over here. That's pretty good. And now we need to get this blue, this magenta, and this blue down here as well. So let's get right into this. So green is going to be above and below. So we don't want to use this green right here because that's not going to help us. And perhaps what we can do here is we can simply just use this blue just to set up this bottom, just to set up this yellow over here. But what I'm nervous about is I'm nervous about the possibility of there being a bunch of yellows, and that would cause problems for us. But we do have the cyan, which we can just change the left and right over here. So now what we can do is we can now use blue freely, which would give us the yellow. Note that you really don't want to focus on these positions because this is not really going to be the important part of this module here. So now let's get into this one over here. Let's make you a cyan is left and right. Cyan is left and right, so we can now we can just focus on this little bit right here. We can make you a red, and we can now input the yellow right there. Perfect. And one of the things that we can immediately notice here is that also this green happens to not be the exact same color as this one down at the bottom. This is perfect. This just means that we're doing things correctly. We want to make sure that if we happen to have one of these 3 spots left, so in this case we happen to have this one is the one that we haven't done quite yet, we want to make sure that this middle is not the exact same color, because if we happen to put a red right here, that's going to cause problems for us. But in this case, we're good to go. All we simply need to do is we need to simply adjust using green here with the above and below. We simply need to make this one into a red. And just like that, we will now have this yellow sorted out. Now we need to get the corners developed. And what we can do here is we can use already what we have set up for us. We can use this guy, make you into a yellow right here, make you into a yellow right over here. Perfect. Now all we need is these 2 spots. Rather, this one right over here. This guy right over here. So we need to develop that spot. And this is going to be a bit interesting to do. So let's figure this out. So number 1, we've already figured out that this corner is safe. All we simply need to use is we actually need to use this yellow over here, and we can just simply make you a yellow. We don't have any problem with that whatsoever. We can make you back to a yellow, and now what we can do is we can now make you back to a yellow. Now we need to get rid of this yellow in the center here. We need to be very careful with this because this is very important that you make sure you don't mess this up. Now, what we can do here is perhaps... This is going to be a bit interesting. Let me think. Okay, let me see if this works. So, yellow. Yellow's a weird one. This is not in the best position, but I'll manage. I'll find a way to, anyways. Ooh, what we can do here is we can now actually change this to a green. And now what we can do, no, we want to change it back to a cyan, actually. Excuse me, cyan. Get these back to the same color. So we want to make you into a cyan. Okay, good. And now we've just moved this over to that corner. This is going to be weird. Okay, this will be definitely strange. God, why does it have to be magenta? Okay, give me a second. Let me think about this. Left and right. What if we just actually made this a blue instead? That causes the exact same issue. God dang. And both of these happen to be red as well. Great. Oh, boy. Boy, the comments are going to be screeching at me. I'm so sorry, guys. I told myself I would voice enter hell. Oh, wait, maybe we have an answer here? Maybe we have something going for us? Yes, here we go. Just like that, bingo. Okay, so all I had to do was I had to figure out some way to change these colors, and I used the two corners to figure that out. So that's perfect. So sorry about that, struggling that for a little bit, but let's get back into this module. This is the reason why yellow is such an important thing to do. This one obviously is probably the hardest of the easy numbers to get, but using it with yellow is such an important detail because of the fact that you can use the yellow diagonals in these positions to just cover themselves, and that's just what I use right here. As that knowledge. So I'd like to apologize for struggling with that for so long, but just like that, we were able to figure that out. So now let's get to the rest of these numbers here. So let's do red for one, like I normally do. Cyan, please. Oh, this will be really good then. Okay, we already got 3 reds started off for us. That's perfect. Let's make you red. Perfect. Let's try and sort out this issue here. Let's make you green. Right here. Okay. Let's make you blue. There we go. And now 1 has been taken care of. Okay. Now let's mix up the board again. Let's make cyan for the 4, and then we will be done with this step. So let's do... or we can just simply do magenta here too. That actually is working really well. Let's do that. Let's make sure we get over here too. It's very important that we do this right now. Here's magenta. Ooh, okay, let's think about this very carefully here. Let's get a red in here. Okay. Let's get a magenta right there. Let's try and get a red in there. Oh, I messed up the corners. Hold on. Oop, I had a red there for a moment. Okay, magenta's in there. Perfect. Let's get the magenta right in here. Perfect. And now what we need to do is we need to get a red right over here. So let's do a bit of funky stuff. So let's get the red right over here. Let's get the red right over here. Let's get the red right over here. And just like that, get the magenta inside of there. Let's deal with this issue. One more pressure to do it. And just like that, we have solved the 4. So now, what we have here is we have Hitman. That was our last, that was our solve module that comes last in alphabetical order. Hitman is going to be our word here. There are obviously no other spaces that I really need to worry about here. And now what we're going to do is we're only going to look at 6 characters here. That's actually quite nice. And now what we're going to do is we're going to take the some of the digits in the serial number, which in this case was a 7, and we're going to be multiplying each of these guys together. So we've got 7 times 8, modulo this by 23, is going to be 10. That's going to be a Lima. 9 is going to be multiplied by 7, modulo this by 23 is going to be a 17. That's going to be Sierra. Tango is going to be 20 times this by 7, modulo 23 is going to be a 2. That's going to be Charlie. Mike is going to be, 13 is going to be multiplied by 7, modulo this by 23 is going to be 22, which is Yankee. We do not have any applied knowledge here. 1 times 7 is going to be 7. That's going to be Hotel. And then 14 times this by 14 times this by 7, modulo this by 23 is going to be a 6, which is going to be Golf. Okay. So now we're going to input this in, we're going to reverse this string of letters, simply enter this backwards, and we're going to get Golf Hotel, Yankee, Charlie, Sierra, and Lima.
That is absolutely right.
And just like that is a solved module. I would like to apologize for messing around with the yellow 0 for so long. I know the comment section is going to be very angry about that, but thank you guys so much for watching. It has been a great 500 tutorials that we've come so far. I'm very pleased to have done this so much for the community, and I will continue to do so much. Currently, we're at, how many tutorials are we at right now? We're doing really, really well, by the way. So there are currently now, we're back up to, let's not include needies, by the way. I'm not really focused on the needies right now. If we go back down to here, we're currently at 155, but bear in mind, there is like 20 hexa buttons that have yet to be done. So this is actually 135. So the progress is going great. We have a lot that we still have left to do, but I'm so pleased to have had the honor and the privilege of doing 3 cryptic steps as my 500th tutorial. It's a very tough module to do, as you saw by my strugglings. But I'm just so glad that I've made it this far, and I didn't even expect to make it for 500. But yeah, thank you guys for watching. As always, stay crazy and stay cool, and I will see you guys in the next one. Bye-bye.